What is up? What is good, guys, and everybody else? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to House of K. It's your boy Fuller, and we're back with another League of Legends related reaction. This time I will be reacting to Necrit, the Principles of Strength Noxus Law. I am sure somebody has told me how to, what order to react to these, or what to react to first when it comes to Necrit or these type of law videos, but I do not remember which one it was. So anyways, I'm just doing this one first because it's Noxus. Noxus is cool as fuck. So yeah, I decided to do this one first. If there is an actual order to how to react to these ones, in which order to react to them, you can let me know. And I will do that. So yeah, anyways, I hope you enjoy this video. If you do, please leave a like, sub to the channel, and leave a comment down below telling me what your thoughts were on this video. And if you have not watched the video yet, I will leave a link in the description below so you guys can check out the video itself, the original video. And yeah, there you go. Hey.
Hello everyone and welcome!
What's good?
Every major place in Runeterra has to have a good introduction. Without knowing the place, we don't have a context for the stories of our champions. That's why we are going to have a look at a Noxian story called The Principles of Strength.
Is the artwork being used here like actual artwork for the kingdom, like
my name
for
is
the law itself?
Gloriana Valokan.
What I'm trying to ask is this
my ancestors
Noxus
ruled the Delverhold as kings. Warlords, nations, and would-be empires sought to overthrow us. Jealous of the wealth the Iron Spike Mountains offered up to us, but none could breach our fortress. They broke against our walls like ocean waves, and fell back from the doom of our blades. All of them failed. Until Noxus came. And then, my family were kings no more. She held her head high as they climbed the stairs of triumph. Livered guards stood sentinel every 12 steps, but her flinty gaze was locked forward, unwavering. This might have been Alisa's first time in the capital, but she refused to be overawed. She would not gawk like some provincial lowborn. She was of the Delverhold, and the blood of kings flowed through her veins.
Okay.
The steps were flanked by guards clad in dark steel. The ore used in the forging of their armor came from the depths below her mountain home. All the best blade in Noxus started there.
How has she not been in the capital?
For 5 generations,
if she has the blood of kings in her?
By Noxus and incorporated into the empire. It had been so. Red banners rippled in the evening's dry wind as they ascended. The scent of coal fire and industry wafted upon that hot breeze. In Noxus the forges rarely cooled. The immortal bastion loomed before them, dark and threatening. They flaunt their wealth and decadence, while we live as paupers, said her brother, Orem. She looked askance at him, striding beside her. Orem Arkan Valokan, broad-shouldered, strong of arm, and undeniably skilled with a blade. He was also arrogant and limited of mind, in Alisa's opinion, but she kept her disdain concealed behind an impassive, unexpressive mask. He was her elder, if only by a matter of minutes, and was only 2 steps removed from ruling the Delverhold himself. Alisa was well aware of her place. Outwardly, the fact they were twins was obvious. Both were tall and athletic in stature, and each had cold eyes of the family line, as well as the proud Devenol of those born to nobility.
Of the
Both
family
wore their
line?
long black hair bound artfully in tight braids. They each bore angular facial tattoos, and wore shale grey cloaks over their armor. They reached the top of the stairs. There was a flutter of wings, and a raven flew low over their heads. Alisa almost flinched, but caught herself. Should we consider that an ill omen, brother? She saw Orem's hands turn to fists. Too long have we filled the coffers of Noxus and armored its soldiers. He snarled, making only the barest pretense in keeping his voice out of the earshot of the guards. And for what?
He's gonna get himself killed,
for survival, bro. Alisa thought, though she didn't speak it out loud. A pair of warriors clad in full plate awaited them outside the great metal doors of the palace. They stood to attention, heavy axe-headed halberds gripped in their gauntlets. The 3 indentations in their breastplates and their dark red cloaks and tabards informed Alisa these were no regular guards.
Really?
Legionnaires.
Legionnaires.
Orem, his usual bluster and arrogance forgotten. In a nation of killers, the elite Triforian Legion was feared and respected above all. by both friend and foe alike. It was said that their mere presence had seen cities and nations take the knee, rather than face them in battle. They honor us, Alisa said. Come, brother. It's time we meet this so-called Council of Three for ourselves.
Council of Three, right? They do not rule like as only not one person rules the thing.
First thing
It's a
anyone
group.
saw as they entered the audience chamber was the throne of the old Noxian emperors. It was an immense thing, carved of obsidian, blunt and angular, and the innumerable hanging banners, sharply angled pillars, and the burning sconces all worked to direct the eye back toward it. It dominated the space entirely. The throne sat empty, however, as it had since the previous Grand General of Noxus had died. Not died, Alisa corrected herself. Been executed. No emperor for Noxus. No tyrant upon the throne. Not any longer. Before she'd left the Delverhold, Alisa had been counseled regarding the new leadership. The Triferix. Her father's chief advisor had named it. Three together, each representing one of the core principles of strength, vision, might, and guile. The theory is where a single individual could doom Noxus through incompetence, madness, or corruption. Now there will always be two others to hold any rogue third accountable.
That is true.
To Alisa, this was an intriguing concept, but one that remained untested in practice. The chamber felt
It has its issues
large
as well.
enough to house over 1,000 petitioners, but at this moment it was empty, other than the three figures that sat at the simple table of marbled stone at the foot of the throne's raised platform. The two grim unspeaking warriors of the Trifarian Legion escorted Alisa and her brother toward the trio, their footfalls echoing sharply upon the cold floor. The three were deep in discussion, but they ceased their talk as the siblings of the Delverhold came towards them. They were seated in a row, facing the approaching envoys like a silent panel of judgment. Two of them she knew by reputation. The third, well, no one knew anything really. In the center, keen-eyed and unblinking, sat Jericho Swain, the renowned visionary, the new Grand General. Some among the noble houses still called him Usurper, since it was he who had dragged the madman Boram Darkwill from the throne of Noxus. But none of them said it to his face. His gaze, which seemed to see too much, bore first into Overlord, then Alisa. She resisted the urge to stare at the sleeve of his left arm, tucked within his dark coat. It was said that he has lost the limb during the failed invasion of Ionia, severed by some blade witch of the Fey archipelago. To his right sat Darius, the legendary Hand of Noxus, leader of the elite Triforian Legion, and now commander of all the Empire's armies. He was the embodiment of might itself. Where Swain sat rightly upright, Darius slouched back, the fingers of one gauntleted hand drumming a steady tattoo upon the wooden armrest of his chair.
I didn't know that they actually failed in the invasion of Ionia.
The third figure, only ever referred to as the Faceless, was a mystery. This individual sat unmoving, bedecked from head to toe in many-layered voluminous robe. They wore blank, staring, glossy black masks, and even the eye holes were obscured with dark mesh, giving away nothing to their identity.
Damn.
Their hands too were concealed, hidden in sleeves of thick fabric. Alisa thought she perceived a vaguely feminine aspect to the mask, but that might simply have been the way it happened to catch the light. A barely perceptible inclination of the chin from Darius dismissed the legionnaires that had escorted them in. The two warriors slammed their armored fists into their breastplates in salute, and retreated a half a dozen steps, leaving Alisa and her brother alone before the Triferix. "Sit, please," said Swain, indicating to the chairs opposite. "I prefer to stand, Grand General," replied Oram. "As you wish." There was something undeniably threatening and predatory about the Grand General, Alisa decided, considering he was a cripple heading into his twilight years. Oram and Alisa Valloken, third and fourth born children of the governor of the Delverhold.
Governor of the
He continued.
Delverhold.
"It's a long journey from the Iron Spike Mountains. I take it this is not a social visit. I came bearing the seal of my father," said Oram, "to speak in his name." "Get on with it then," said Darius, his voice the warning growl of a merkwolf. "No ceremony. This is Noxus, not some noble court." His accent was rough and earthly, not cultured like Swain's. The voice of a commoner, Alisa could almost feel her brother sneer. For decades, the Delverhold had served loyally. Oren began empathizing the nobility of his own accent, perhaps in an unwise show of superiority. Our gold feeds the campaigns of conquest. Our ironclads and
This dude's gonna get himself killed, fam.
The Trifarian Legion too. Darius remained unimpressed.
Iron Spike ore makes the best armor. I would not have the Legion protected in anything else. You should be proud.
We are proud, my lord, said Alisa.
I'm no lord, especially not yours.
Oof.
Swain smiled, raising his hand.
What he means to say is, in Noxus, no man or woman is born superior to another. It is not by bloodline that one earns their place, but by their deeds.
Of course, Alisa demurred, cursing herself inwardly for her mistake. We toil like slaves in the darkness of the deep mines below the mountains. Oram went on. And every day we watch as the fruits of our labor are taken away from us in great wagon trains and come back empty. We are scarcely able to feed our...
Oh, really?
Swain exclaimed, raising an eyebrow. Please, show me your palms.
Do you
said
work?
Oram, taken back.
Show us your hands, boy.
Said Darius, leaning on the polished surface of the table between them.
Show us these hands that toil the rock and dust and darkness beneath your mountain fortress.
Oram squared his jaw, refusing to be drawn. Darius scoffed.
Never struggled a day in his life,
Yeah.
this one. Her, neither. The only Calusas you two possess certainly didn't come from hard work.
I will not be spoken to in such a manner by... Oram began, but Alisa placed a placating hand upon his shoulder. He angrily shrugged it off, but wisely chose not to finish the thought. The mountains are being blood dry, he said, his voice more measured. It is unsustainable, and that is not good for anyone, not for us, and certainly not for the armies of Noxus. There must be concession.
Tell me, Oram Arkan Vallokan,
Said Swain.
how many warriors does the Delverhold send out to fight for Noxus? Approximately, annually.
None, sir, but that is by the by. Our people serve better working the mines and guarding the northern frontiers from barbarian attack. This is where our chief value to Noxus lies. Swain sighed. Of all the provinces, city-states, and nations that submit to Noxus, the Delverhold stands alone in providing no soldiers to join our war.
Oh, so they're the only ones
You
who
do
don't.
not bleed for Noxus. You have never bled for Noxus.
Is that not concession enough? It is not. Oram replied curtly. We have come at our father's behalf to renegotiate our ties, or the Delverhold will have no option but to reconsider its place within the Noxian Empire. The room
Are
had
you sure
become
you
very
guys have the
still.
power
Even
to do
Darius
that?
had ceased the incessant tapping of his fingers. Alisa's face drained of color, and stared at her brother in horror. It was a turn she had not been privy to, and
Yeah.
her mind reeled at its implications.
That should be scary
The
as
faceless
fuck.
continued to gaze levelly at her from behind that glossy mask.
I see.
Said Swain, finally.
I believe I know your father's real purpose in sending the two of you here. But the question is, do you?
Oram nodded to Alisa. Show them. He ordered, his eyes flashing in anger. She took a deep breath and brought forth a scroll case. Unhooking its end with trembling fingers, she slid free an old shaft of parchment, covered in intricate angular writing of Noxian.
I am
It
stressed.
bore both the seal of the Delverhold and the blood-red crest of Noxus. She placed it up on the table and smoothed it flat before standing back at her brother's side, although half a step behind, as was her place, according to Iron Spike customs.
Okay.
Darius appeared disinterested, but both Swain and the Faceless leaned forward to look upon the document. Once again, Alisa found herself trying to get any sense of who it was that hid behind the mask. When the Delverhold submitted to Noxian rule 87 years ago, said Oram, our ancestors gave up their sovereign rights and bowed before the throne of Noxus. The very throne I see before me now, empty. Darius growled at him.
And?
The terms are clear, as you can see for yourself as to where we pledged our allegiance.
To the throne.
The last man to sit on that throne died a little over 7 years ago, said
Bruh.
Oram, gesturing up at the dais.
This will not
As
end
far as our
well.
father is concerned, this piece of paper is now worthless. The Delverhold is under no obligation to continue to pay their tithes at all, but has continued to do so as an act of good faith. However, if our concessions are not met, The Delverhold will be forced to extricate itself from the Empire.
Fam.
The Iron Spike region will no longer be under our imminent protection.
I don't know if you
Alisa
guys...
wanted to look away, wanted to run, but found herself rooted at the spot as she waited for the reaction of the Council.
Yo, this will not end well for you.
Remembers the victors.
Darius warned them.
Stand with Noxus and be remembered forever. Stand against us and you will be crushed and forgotten.
No army has ever breached the Delverhold, said Oran. Our forefathers opened the gates to Noxus willingly, remember. No blood was spilled.
You're playing a dangerous game, boy.
Darius pointed to
Well,
the
I
warriors
mean,
standing
they have a
two
reason
paces
to,
behind
I guess.
Alisa and Oran.
Just 2 of the Trifarian Legion could walk in and take your precious Delverhold. I wouldn't even trouble myself to go with them.
As if to empathize his point, the 2 legionnaires slammed the butts of their halberds into the floor, the sound echoing like a thunderclap. Oram scoffed at the display, but Darius's confidence struck Alisa. He did not seem to be a man to make idle boasts.
Yeah.
Enough.
Said Swain with a wave of his hand.
Let us hear what these concessions would entail.
Yeah, this is interesting,
The
fam.
silver moon had passed the zenith in the night sky overhead by the time Alisa and Oram left the palace. They began making their way to
Well, at
a
least
nearby estate that served as their base of operations within the capital.
At least they left
Alisa
alive.
was quiet and brooding, her stomach as a tight knot of unease. But her brother seemed energized by the encounter with the rulers of Noxus. Swain will agree to our terms. I'm
Yeah, you
sure
should
of
be
it.
stressed right
He
now.
gushed. He knows the Delverhold is too important to the Empire to allow Father to close its gates. This is madness. Alisa muttered. We walk in there and you threaten them?
Right?
What was your plan? That was Father's plan. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have agreed to it had you known?
No, because it's a crazy plan.
Alisa replied. This is fool's errand. We may just as well have offered ourselves for the next flashing.
Yeah.
If Swain is convinced, we only need one of the others to join him for them to concede to our terms, said Oran, seeming not to hear her concerns. That is how the Trifarix works. Their leadership cannot be deadlocked, when only 2 of them need to agree on anything to get it done. Darius will never agree. Darius is an arrogant dog. He thinks he could send 2 men to take the Delverhold? But I fear you are right. While he objects, that leaves only the faceless. Our future prosperity lies within the vote of whoever is behind that mask. Then there is nothing more to do but wait to hear what our fates will be.
Man,
Said
I
Alisa,
am
a hint
stressed
of
for these
bitterness
people,
in her
fam.
voice. Oram's eyes gleamed dangerously. Not necessarily. The knot in Alisa's stomach tightened a little more as he began to explain.
Your brother's a fool. I'm telling you.
Dawn was still several hours away, but Alisa was already uncomfortably warm as she made her way swiftly and quietly through the streets of the capital. At the head of a contingent of Delverguard, she wore a tight-fitting helm of dark steel, and already she could feel her hair dampening with sweat beneath it. There were a dozen of them in all, cloaked and hooded over their armor. All carried heavy crossbows, with blades strapped to their waists. In this city, it was not at all unusual to see armored warbands from all across the Empire.
Okay.
If anyone saw them, their weapons would not raise alarm. And yet, Alisa could not shake the feeling they were being watched. And somehow...
No shit,
that
you just
observer
written the
knew
kingdom,
their
bro.
intent. The streets and alleys of Noxus were narrow and twisting, designed to strive and frustrate any attacking force that managed to penetrate the city's outer defenses. The rooftops
That's
were
smart.
flat and turnilated, like the battlements of a castle, allowing any soldiers above dominate an enemy below. Alisa eyed those dark rooftops warily. Anyone could be up there, marking their progress. They could well be walking into an ambush. A fluttering of black wings overhead made her skid to a halt, swinging her crossbow skyward. She cursed herself for being so jumpy, and gestured her retainers on.
But I understand.
This is a bad idea.
I understand how
Alisa
she
said
feels
to
that way.
herself for the 20th time
But what is
since
she
the
doing
evening.
right now? What are they doing?
She
What's
had
their
said
plan?
as much to her brother, trying to dissuade him from this course of action. But his mind was
Don't
set.
tell me they're about
This
to...
was their father's will.
They're
Or
about to
as stated
attack.
with finality. They would return home having secured a new deal, or they would not return at all. There was no
Damn.
other course. Now she had some time to digest it. Alisa was not surprised that this was the old governor's plan all along. Of course it was. While it may well end in both her and her brother's capture and subsequent execution, what was dead to her father? He had never cared for either of them overmuch, saving his
I'm not even
affection for his
surprised.
heir, Alisa's oldest brother.
It makes so much
Harold.
sense.
And if they were caught and the Triferics tried to hold them as hostages to keep the Delverhold within the rule of Noxus, she knew what her father's answer would be. To him, Alisa and Oram were expendable.
Yeah.
She and her men hugged the shadows as
He
closed
really
in on the
has an
shrine of the
air.
wolf, which butted up against the old southern bulwarks of the immortal bastion itself. Her brother would be a few streets to the east, with more of their armored retainers. In the weeks before the contingent arrived in the capital, spies in their employ had been watching the comings and goings around the palace. One of their observations had been of a particular interest, and it was upon that intelligence that Alisa and her brother were now operating. They were getting close. Alisa lifted a hand, and the Delver Guard fell in around her, pausing in the shadows of a narrow passage looking
They're about to
towards
do
the
some
shrine of the
stupid
wolf.
shit, fam.
It was a tall, multi-tiered tower with open sides, each level held aloft by pillars of dark stone. In the center of the tower, looming almost 50 feet high, was a massive obsidian statue of a seated wolf. They waited there for a long minute, until they saw two brief flashes of light in the distance, the sparks of a blade against flint. That was the signal that Oram was in place, and the way was clear. Let's move. Alisa hissed, and as one, she and her attendants were up and running, breaking from cover and hurrying towards the shrine, watchful for guards.
What are they trying
There
to
were
do?
none. It seemed her brother and his men had done their work. Alisa locked up to the steps of the shrine, indicating with a flick of her hand for her warriors to spread out. They entered, passing over the threshold and circled around the statue of the wolf. They hugged the shadows, leaning against the pillars, melding into the darkness, and waited. She gazed up. In ancient Valoran custom, death was often represented as a dualistic in nature, taking the form of the lamb of peaceful death and the wolf of violent ends.
Okay.
In Noxus, the latter was honored with rather more rigor and panoply. Dying peacefully in one's
Obviously.
bed was not the way to secure honor in an empire that venerated strength.
Obviously.
Alisa steadied her breathing, trying
You
to
better
slow
go
her
out
racing
swinging.
heart. Her hands were clumsy. She wiped them on her cloak. Waiting was always the worst part. She glanced around again and found herself barely able to make out her retainers. Good. If they were spotted too early, then all of this would be for naught. Alisa reached up and fastened the veil of finely wrought chainmail to her helmet, so that it hung below her eyes, obscuring her features. A distant watchtower tolled the 4th hour. Alisa readied herself. If the information from their spies was correct, the target would be approaching any moment. And, as if on cue, a heavily robed figure emerged. It came from
Wait.
the direction of the immortal bastion proper, accompanied
You
by
lie,
4
is
palace
that-
guards. The lead figure was almost invisible in the pre-dawn
The
darkness,
faceless?
dressed as they were, from head to toe in black. It was the third member of the Triferic,
Are they trying to
the
fucking...
Faceless. The anonymous figure walked slowly towards the shrine, heads turning from side to side as if scanning the shadows. Their hands were clasped before them, hidden beneath heavy sleeves. The guard stopped at the foot of the shrine. It appeared the Faceless conferred with them briefly, although Alisa was too far away to hear their words, before the masked figure continued on alone, seemingly to pay respects to the wolf.
Are
While
they
warriors
crazy?
of the Warhost and the Reckoners of the Gladiator Pits were perhaps the most frequent visitors of the various martial shrines scattered around the capital, even bureaucrats, shopkeepers, and servants made frequent offerings. The Faceless, it had been observed, visited this shrine at the 4th hour every 5th day.
What are they trying to
always
do?
guarded and under the cover of darkness. Thankfully, while the loyalties of the Triferian Legion were absolute, Mere Palace guards could be most certainly bribed to look the other way. As the masked figure approached the great statue, Alisa stepped out of the concealing darkness. On cue, the paid-off guards turned on their heels and marched back toward the immortal bastion. Alisa had her crossbow leveled at the Faceless as she stepped cautiously into the flickering light of the sconces around the statue. "Don't move, and don't cry out," she hissed.
This will
"Your
not
guards
end
are
well,
gone.
fam.
12 crossbows are aimed at you right now." The robed figure made a muffled sound, perhaps in surprise, and came a step closer to her. There was something distantly familiar about it, both in the sound and its awkward movement. "Hold, I say," said Alisa. The Faceless froze. No one in Noxus seemed to know who the third member of the Triferics was. No one that Alisa or Oram had been able to find, at least. That was the strength of deception, the principle of guile represented on the Council of Three. But Alisa intended to change that. It's all about leverage, her brother had said.
So they just want to know who the
If we can learn
person
identity
is.
of that one, then we can use it to our advantage. We mean you no harm, Alisa declared as boldly as she could. Take off your mask and there will be no bloodshed. The hooded figure looked around, perhaps seeking the guards, or trying to spot the crossbowman Alisa had spoken of, concealed in the darkness. Then
I
the
am
figure edged
stressed.
forward again, now almost within the weapon's reach, hands still hidden from view. Alisa aimed her crossbow at the figure's chest. Don't take another step. The figure made another muffled sound, shaking the mask emphatically. Alisa narrowed her eyes. Then she exhaled slowly as the realization crept over her. Ah, that makes things easier. She pulled the trigger, and her bolt took the roped figure in the throat. What
Wait.
she already knew was at her side in an instant, urging her to run. We have to go, he said. We have to be out the city before sunrise, before anyone knows what has happened.
What the fuck?
It's already too late. Alisa answered. She knelt beside the figure, now gasping on the ground. Blood was pooling beneath the body. Alisa had seen enough wounds in her time to know this one was fatal. She reached out and pulled the mask free. Oram stared up at her. Her brother's face was pallid, his eyes wild, and a gag had been stuffed in his mouth.
What the
He
fuck?
jerked and twitched as death came for him. The movement pulled his sleeves back, revealing his hands bound tightly together with cord. In his last moment, his gaze shifted from Alisa to the massive statue of the wolf looming over them. It was then that the legionnaires arrived, lopping out of the darkness like hunting hounds.
No
to surround the
shit.
shrine. The sun was high in the cloudless sky outside, sending angled beams of light through the narrow-slit windows into the audience chamber. Alisa stood before the Triferics once more, her head held high, wrists manacled behind her back. The members of the council regarded her carefully. The inscrutable masked face of the faceless was, to Alisa in the moment, perhaps the most intimidating of the three. It was Swain who finally broke the silence. Let me speak plainly, he said. The Delverhold is of great value to Noxus, but not so valuable that we would acquiesce to the demands and threats of its governor. That would be a signal of weakness.
It's truth.
Within the week, a dozen other provinces would be lining up with the
Yeah.
demands of their own.
Yeah.
No, that was never going to happen.
Yeah, that
But
was
you
never gonna
already
happen.
knew that. I did, said Alisa. My brother clearly didn't. Then, it might make lesser minds wonder. Why would an intelligent young woman such as yourself go along with such an obvious and clumsy scheme? Duty, Alisa replied. Duty to the Empire must always overshadow duty to family,
Ooh.
said Swain. Alisa might have imagined it, but she thought she saw Darius's expression darken very slightly at those words. Even so, the hand of Noxus held his tongue. I agree entirely, said Alisa, which is the reason when I realized it was my brother under the mask, I shot him. Swain turned towards the mask.
That's a lie. She didn't,
Risky
right?
gambit. To gag and disguise your captive. There were other ways we might have tested her.
Wait, did
She
she?
turned back to Alisa.
She had realized it was the
Indulge me,
brother?
please. For the benefit of my fellow council members, why would you knowingly shoot and kill your brother? My father sent us here to die, Alisa replied.
Oh
And would
shit!
it be
Wait,
unjust to justify
she
closing
knew it
the
was the
gates
brother.
that overhaul to Noxus? Go on. My father and my brothers are fools. They had been blinded by their desires to rule the Ironspike Mountains as kings once more, as our forebears did. They would lead my people to their doom for such a fleeting vanity. The merest hint of an icy smile turned the corner of Swain's mouth. So then, Alisa Roshka Gloriana Valokan, what would you propose instead? The aging governor Valokan,
Fire!
an expression of pure outrage upon his face, as Alisa threw open the doors to his study chamber. What is this, girl? He snarled, raising to his feet. You return unannounced? Where's Oram? Striding behind her were two warriors of the Triferian Legion.
Yeah, they
posing
fucked. They
and
say two of
obvious
them
in their
can take.
dark Ironspike armor, halberds at the ready. Beside her father was her brother Herok, heir to the Delverhold. His eyes were wide and fearful. Guards! the governor shouted. Stop them! His personal guard, however, made no move to intervene. The reputation of the Legion was known throughout Valorant, even amongst those who had never fought beside or against them. They marched with the authority of the Hand of Noxus. To defy them would be to defy the Triferix itself. Alyssa had thought much about the words Darius had spoken. Those words that her brother had scoffed at.
Yeah.
Just two of the Triferix.
Exactly what I was just about to say.
Take your precious Delverhole.
And they literally did.
No idle boast after all. What have you done? Her father hissed, sinking back into his chair. What was needed? Alyssa produced a rolled parchment, freshly written and stamped with the crest of Noxus, the crest of the Triferix, and slammed it down on the table before her father, making him jump. On the order of the Grand General, I am removing you from office, said Alyssa. Henceforth, I shall govern this place for the good of the Empire.
Yeah.
You, her father scoffed. A woman has never ruled the Delverhole.
First time for everything,
then
bro.
Perhaps it is time that changed. It is time for someone who will look to the future of our people and not obsess about the kings and faded glory of the past. Alyssa nodded, and her father's own guard stepped forward, grabbing hold of it. You can't do this, he screamed.
His
I am
own
your lord.
guards.
You are no lord, said Alyssa, especially not mine.
Oh, the same thing that the Noxians told her.
And that was the Principles of Strength by Anthony Reynolds. I love how every story Riot releases has an awesome twist that feels like a plot twist from a book. This story felt like a scene ripped from Game of Thrones. I loved every second of it as I tried to figure out where all these hints were leading. In the end, a brilliant story to set up a new place in the universe. But, sadly, that's it for this video. So if you enjoyed it, feel free to rate it and subscribe for more lore and news.
Yo, that was fire. That was a twist, fam. The whole the thing that they were told that Alyssa and the brother, what's the brother's name? I have it right here. Oran. Yes, Alyssa and Oran were told that only two of those Triferian legions could waltz into the kingdom, into their place, right? And basically take it over. Did they know this was gonna happen? Did they foresee this type of thing? Because this is way too convenient, fam. It just can't just happen. They might have like foreseen these events happening in this way, because they literally walked into the kingdom with her and took it over just like that, bro. Just exactly how they said it. That's fucking fire, man. Yo, these Noxians are not people to trifle with, fam. And Alyssa's pretty smart too, because she knew what the fuck was going on and she knew this was a bad plan. Hell, anybody could know that was a bad plan from the get-go. These guys were just power-hungry fools, fam. That's all they were. And I don't get why the brother Oram was also going along with this, because he knew they were being sent there to die. Why would you go along with that? You're gonna die, fam, for nothing. You're not even considered worth it, fam. Come on. But anyways, you know, it is what it is. The way the story was going, I was pretty stressed, fam. Because I knew this was a bad plan. So I was like, man, you guys are gonna die, fam. At some point, you're gonna die. Because there is no way you're gonna walk into Noxus, right? And threaten them and then walk out peacefully, fam. No way. But I did not see the twist there. Did she actually realize that was her brother underneath the robe? Because, I mean, it did say that she was like, oh, so that's how it is. Before she shot the person, right? I thought it was just because maybe the person was refusing, like, to take off the mask. But no, it could be that she realized that was the brother, because she's pretty smart. It could be that she realized that was the brother, and this was kind of like a test, and so that's why she shot the person. Anyways, because I was like, she just said they mean no harm to this person, right? And I was actually believing them, so it makes no sense for them to turn around and then actually just shoot the person. Like, what? You know, it's crazy, but man, this was good. I enjoyed this a lot. I really did. And I like that little bit at the end where she basically repeated what the Noxians told her. You are no lord, certainly not mine, which is the same thing that they told that they told them when they went to Noxus. That's very good. That's very good. It's fire. I'm guessing these are standalone stories, right? Or maybe there is an overarching storyline to them. But I think this one at least was a standalone story, which could be added to the main storyline if you wanted to. But I'm guessing there is no problem with watching this one on its own. Hopefully, anyways, like I said at the beginning of the video, if there is an order to watch these, you can let me know. Because I will probably be watching a couple of these a week, and yeah, I would like to watch them in the correct order. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, sub to the channel, and leave a comment down below telling me what your thoughts were on this video. And yeah, later.